viewers, today I am going to introduce you to a great writer who contributed immensely to the world of English literature. He is none other than Eugene O'Neill. He is a towering personality who ruled the English literary world, and he was born in New York City on October 16 in the year 1888 to James and Ella O'Neill. He was blessed to have a protected childhood and was educated in boarding schools in his formative years, and then was a student at Princeton University for a year, that is from 1906 to 1907. After Eugene left school, he started educating himself, what he later called or titled it as life experience. Over the next 6 years, he shipped to sea, lived impoverished on the waterfronts of New York, Buenos Aires and Liverpool. The tough life shattered him and he became alcoholic and also attempted suicide. The struggles made him very sensitive to the challenges of life. For some time, he could not manage them. O'Neill finally began to recover from the depressed state, and his first assignment was that of a reporter for New London Daily Telegraph. Eugene was compelled or forced to quit his reporting job when he became extremely ill with tuberculosis and was subsequently hospitalized in Gaylord Farm Sanatorium in Wallington, Connecticut for 6 months. His stay in the hospital gave him an opportunity to reassess his life in what he later termed it as rebirths. After his hospitalization, O'Neill studied the techniques of playwriting at Harvard University from 1914 to 1915 under the tutelage of a great scholar, George Piers Baker. In the summer of 1916, O'Neill started a playhouse. Bound East for Cardiff was O'Neill's first play, and it was his first humble contribution to the world of drama. For 10 years, O'Neill worked as a dramatist and playwright for this company. O'Neill's first full-length venture was produced on Broadway on February 2, 1920 at Morosco Theatre. Beyond the Horizon won the Pulitzer Prize for Drama, the first of 4 awarded to O'Neill in his lifetime. O'Neill was later awarded Pulitzers for Anna Christie, Strange Interlude, and Long Day's Journey into Night. O'Neill was also the first American playwright to receive the Nobel Prize for Literature. So this shows how immense was his contribution to the world of literature. The years from 1920 to 1943, O'Neill became highly productive and contributed 20 long plays and many short stories to the world of literature. All of O'Neill's plays are based purely on his perspectives, his observations, which mirror the tragedy of a human condition. O'Neill's early life is strongly reflected in his writing. To a certain extent, this shows that those writings were autobiographical in nature. His character sketches represent the complex situations of his protected childhood and wild adulthood. Before O'Neill, most American drama was farce or melodrama. O'Neill explored the theatre to tackle and present serious social issues and ideas. He gave a facelift to the American theatre and was treated as a serious and important cultural institution. O'Neill enjoys the popularity of becoming the first American playwright. His plays portray American tragedy, rooted in American history and social movements. O'Neill's lofty vision was misinterpreted as working towards his greatness. His dramas excel in expressionistic theatrical techniques and brilliant use of symbol devices that express religious and philosophical ideas. O'Neill even used ancient Greek chorus as a device to analyze the action of many of his plays. That was a unique method he adopted in order to add glamour to his plays. He added new dimensions through psychological depth, poetic symbolism and expressionistic technique to the American theatre. O'Neill instilled new life into American theatre. The last 20 years of his life, he battled with a crippling nervous disorder and died in the year 1953. The firemen and other workers who worked on transatlantic ocean liner gather in the forecastle of the ship to gossip and enjoy the drink. The muscular and fierce looking men are out to set sail for 7 days. Young, the fiercest of all the leads, the team and the other men are in always awe with him. A very fierce and burly and muscular guy. The men on ship constantly talk about home and this irritates Young and he tells the tenor to be quiet. Long, another worker on the ship, is heavily drunk, stands up and makes a Marxist speech. Young tells him to join the Salvation Army and get a soapbox. Paddy, a wise old fireman, compares life on the ocean liner with hell. He is lost in his old world charms of his life on a clipper ship. Young tells Paddy that he is dead, living in the past of dreams, and elevates his own job as the strength of the ship's speed and force. Mildred and her aunt lays on the boardwalk deck of the ocean liner. Mildred and her aunt discuss Mildred's need to do service for the poor. Mildred is a social worker in a sense, but is despised by her aunt and she recalls her services as slumming. Look at the word he used, slumming. Mildred wants to visit Stokehole and manages to influence an engineer by telling a lie that her father is the president of Nazareth Steel and has given her permission to gain entry into Stokehole to observe the workers there. Escorted by engineer, she enters the Stokehole clad in the white dress, which was not liked by people around. Young and his men are hard at work, shoveling coal in the noisy Stokehole, and Young leads the men at work. An anonymous whistleblower makes the men stop working and Young screams at him. He turns to face Mildred. At the sight of Young, Mildred screams and requests the men to take her away from this filthy beast, and she faints into the arms of the engineers. The men who were around mock at Young and they repeat the words of the Mildred, filthy beast. Paddy tells Young, Mildred, who looked at him like he was a big hairy ape. Young charges towards the door to find Mildred because he was angered and infuriated, but is controlled by other fellow firemen. Young, along with another friend, Long, travels to Fifth Avenue in New York City. Young is arrested again because of his short temper and is imprisoned in Blackwell's Island because of his unruly behavior. He gathers that he is caged because of Mildred's father's strong influence. In a fury, Young actually bends the bars of his cell but is restrained by the guards. Young visits the local IWW but is rejected because the secretary thinks that he is a governmental spy, and Young's radicalism infuriates them and is thrown out on the street. Young spends the night at the Battery and the next morning he visits the monkey house at the zoo. Here again Young is little abnormal in his behavior. He tries to shake hands with the caged ape and he tells the ape that they are alike, both caged and taunted and are victims of the sophisticated society. He tries to shake hands with the gorilla and gets crushed unfortunately in his massive arms and dies in the gorilla's cage. That's how Young meets his miserable death. Very important character and the protagonist of the novel is Young. He is the protagonist of The Hairy Ape, whose struggles are captured as the central theme in the novel Hairy Ape. He is a fireman who works aboard a transatlantic liner, and his real name is Bob Smith and was born in New York City. Unfortunately, Young had a turbulent childhood. His mother died of the tremens and his father, a shore worker, was abusive always. Ironically, his parents, quite contrary to their nature, made him attend church every Sunday morning. After his mother died, Young ran away from home, tired of abusive atmosphere. In the beginning of The Hairy Ape, Young appears to be a contented worker and treats the ship as home and takes pride in his work. His encounter with Mildred Douglas makes him aware of his status and his class. Young, throughout the novel, defines his acceptance or sense of belonging by a group is power, and the rejection is weakness. However, Young is rejected by all facets of society. His fellow firemen, Mildred, the street goers of Fifth Avenue, the IWW, and finally the ape in the zoo. Wherever he goes, he is rejected. He is not accepted by anybody. Young symbolizes the struggle of modern man within industrial society. He cannot control the class or violate ideological barriers all alone, nor can create new ones. Young is the outsider and ultimately just the freak at zoo for people to cage and point at. Now, let's look at second character, Mildred Douglas. Mildred Douglas is depicted as the picture of piety and service. Mildred is the pampered and spoilt brat daughter of the owner of Nazareth Steel. In college, Mildred studied sociology and is on a campaign to help the poor. Mildred has earlier worked with the deprived people in New York's Lower East Side. She, along with her aunt, visits Europe to work on more service projects. While on the ocean liner, Mildred asks permission to look at other half. What does this other half means? Young and the firemen, his team. She wanted to observe them live and their style of working on the ocean liner. She awkwardly dresses in a white dress and visits the stoke hole. Mildred considers her riches, education and identity as waste of her father's steel company. Though Mildred is considered as the antagonist of the hairy ape, she is equally victimized by class as Young. She shares with Young the need to find a sense of usefulness or the sense of belonging. The fates of both the characters were decided before they were born. Thus, Young and Mildred desperately search for an identity of their own. Both the characters fail because of their poor awareness to shed their values and knowledge while searching for a new identity. For example, Mildred will not change out of her white dress, and Young's coal dust is saturated into his skin. Both these characters can never get rid of these and establish their new identity. The third character, who also plays an important but brief role in the novel, is Paddy. Paddy, an old Irish man, a drunkard known for his rendition of Whiskey Johnny and the philosophy based on the stories of his past when intoxicated. Although Paddy only appears in Hairy Ape in 2 scenes. As I mentioned, it was just a brief appearance. He is an essential element of the play. The writer compares Paddy's features with a monkey with sad eyes, that is, sad expression in those eyes. The description is apt because he does labor jobs fit for monkeys. Paddy adds a historical perspective to the Hairy Ape. His detailed and an intricate monologue details how shipping used to be aboard clipper ships. Paddy's presence enriches the theme of the novel and portrays the revolution brought about by machines. Paddy has experienced life on the sea that was free, and he was empowered and valued unlike others. He has tasted both slavery and freedom. Young's frequent references to Paddy as dead and old and not belonging with the other men aboard the ocean liner reveals Young's own denunciation of freedom. The acceptance and attachment to the modern ship machine bind men like Young. Even if they want to free themselves from the shackles of slavery, they cannot. A strong urge to belong to someone without the knowledge of what else to belong to is perilous, as illustrated by Young's encounter with Mildred. Paddy's description of Mildred demonstrates that he has real knowledge of bourgeois lifestyle. Paddy's portrayal of Mildred, look and fainting spell in the stoke hole defines Young's perception of Mildred. Paddy's experiences let him have real opinions, while the maturity of one's opinion is definitely a progression of age. It is also a benefit of freedom. The themes are industrialization and fading values of human race, and these themes are very interestingly introduced in module 4. The rich theme of the Hairy Ape revolves around the negative impact of industrialization and technological progress on the worker. Industrialization has treated the human worker as a machine, as a slave. The men are trained to do one task at a time and are controlled by start and stop sounds of whistles and are not allowed to think independently. Today, the job of a coal worker is actually done by a machine. Workers are thus forced into jobs that require only physical labor, which has in turn converted the worker into a Neanderthal or ape-like state. This is portrayed through O'Neill's stage direction, which shows that the firemen actually look like Neanderthals, and one of the oldest workers, Paddy, is described as extremely monkey-like. The longer the firemen work, the further fall back or they fall on the human evolutionary path. Thus, Paddy, one of the oldest, is especially monkey-like. In a nutshell, the play is a close inquiry into a regressive pattern, not progressive, regressive pattern through Young. The play marks his decay from a Neanderthal on the ship to an actual ape at the zoo. Another theme which dominates the play is the frustration of class. Mildred and Young reflect the highest and the lowest societal classes. As Long would term it, the bourgeois or middle class and the waged people. However, while Mildred and Young's lifestyles are in complete contrast, they share similar complaints about class. Mildred describes herself as the waste product of her father's steel company. She has enjoyed the financial benefits of the company, but could never taste the success achieved through hard work. Mildred yearns to find passion, to touch life beyond her comfortable bourgeois world. Young, on the other hand, has felt too much of the life Mildred describes. Young desires to overthrow the class structure by reinscribing the significance and requirement of the working class. Young defines the importance of who belongs. Class feeling paints both Mildred and Young's financial resources, educational opportunities, outlook on life and the culture. The Hairy Ape reveals how deeply and rigidly class is extolled into American culture and the cultural and financial boundaries it erects. The idea of who belongs and the idea of belonging are continually stressed throughout the novel Hairy Ape. Young compares belonging with power and importance and uses belonging as a way to overturn societal power structures. Young maintains that he belongs to the ship as opposed to the passengers in the first class who are only baggage. Young also connects belonging with an individual's worth and functionality. The firemen belong because they make the ship run and are vital to its workings. Young is especially influenced by Mildred because she presents a world and class which he cannot belong to. After their meeting, the play essentially follows Young in his pursuit to establish his identity, but finally leading him to the monkey house at the zoo. Thought is considered as one of the important themes of the novel. For Young, thought is the crucial boundary. Whether pressing his fingers to his head or sitting in the position of Rodin's the thinker, he cannot gather enough thought to comprehend or compromise with the world around him. Thought only becomes essential for Young after he happens to meet Mildred in the stoke hole. Mildred and his class present a new risk that Young cannot get rid of by physical might. Young is forced to think how he can guard himself. This changeover is illustrated in the tink joke among the men. Before Mildred enters the stoke hole, Young finds thinking absurd. He mocks when he tells the other men that he is trying to tink. What does the word tink means? Tink is nothing but think. He pronounces the word think as tink. However, after the encounter, Young seriously tells the men that he is trying to think. When they joke, correct him in a mocking chorus, think he is hurt. Young's incapability to think not only exposes his regression to a lower animal form, but also turn him into an inadaptable human in the world beyond the ship. Now let us look at the stylistics or the language used by the writer. The Young's characteristic speech, characterized by distorted words, do away with the possibility of Young's successes or acceptance in a world or class other than his own. His deformed language makes real communication impractical. Anne Massa, in Intention and Effect in The Hairy Ape, puts it quite beautifully. Young can only break the bounds of his vocabulary and his style in the same violent and ultimately frustrated way that he blends the bar of a cell, and he can't break the mold of the apparently flexible yet imprisoning medium that is language and that is life. Young's speech defines his class and place in society: rigid, static, obligatory. The first symbol, Rodin's the thinker. Young's notion of Rodin's statue, the thinker, is symbolic of Young's need to think. While he physically embodies the cultural symbol of a thinker, he cannot think himself, he is incapable. Every time O'Neill's stage direction calls for the actor to take the position of the thinker, Young has to come up against an obstacle that cannot be tackled by any other means but thought, when Young cannot process the realities before him. After Young is thrown out of the IWW, he immediately gets into the thinker pose. He is anxious to make sense of a situation and tries to find out why the union has thrown him out. The real ape is the only other character that takes the thinker's position. The ape, sharing the usual body position, reflects on Young's own beastly state. His form of thought is no more advanced than the ape's. Now let us look at another symbol, ape. Apes make their presence felt everywhere in the novel, The Hairy Ape. Young is called an ape. Young thinks he is an ape. Mildred thinks she sees an ape. Young tells people that he is an ape. Senator Queen writes that the Wobblies or the industrial workers will degenerate American civilization back to the ape. Most importantly, there is a real live ape which symbolizes man in a primitive state before technology, intricate language structures, complex thought process or thoughts or money was necessary. The ape represents man that is not only primitive in an evolutionary sense, but is free from shackles of class feeling, technology and other elements of modern society. The ape's basic concern is survival. Thus, Young constantly is compared with apes, and he also shares some features and personality with his early primate associations. Young, like the ape, struggles to understand and evolve in his thought process and fails to understand the class system. At best, basic language skills, and is most concerned with his survival on earth, and nothing else matters to him. In addition, male apes are known to be very protective, stubborn and violent, all descriptors that could be used to portray Young's personality. Another symbol that was effectively used by the author is the metal steel. Steel symbolizes power and oppression in the novel The Hairy Ape. While Young exclaims in scene 1 that he is steel, the muscles and the punch behind it, he is all the while penned in a virtual cage of steel created by the ship around him. Steel also signifies other cages in the play. What are they? Young's jail cell and the cell of the ape. Steel is also tyrannical because it creates jobs like Young's, and it is symbolic of the technology that forces Young and the other firemen to take up or embrace slave-like jobs. To conclude, man has been reduced to an ape according to this novel penned by Eugene O'Neill. I hope you have enjoyed the story. Thank you.